Okay, I think we are recording. This is episode 2 of the Tweets of Laredo podcast. I am Kiros, and with me I have Wolverine. Say hello, Wolverine.
Hello, everyone. I'm
And
back. That's my flamingos in the background.
yes, and we also have Que Fregados.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, hello. I didn't know what to discuss. I kind of like cobbled this thing, hastily. But
Mhm.
one thing that I was thinking about was like this whole deal with the Valley versus Laredo, the 956. Like it's all 956, right?
Yeah.
Like from here to the Valley.
hmm
And I think it was I don't know if it was Soggy Taco or somebody who said like it's not even a valley, it's a delta or something because if
Oh,
you,
I said that.
you
Yeah,
said
Yeah.
that.
it is.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Well,
technically it is a delta.
Well,
yeah. Well, as someone who grew up in the valley, and my third grade teacher actually wrote a book about it.
mhm.
Gift of the Rio, I think it's called. Her name was Dorothy Pope,
Hmm.
and so she had an entire unit on valley history, and basically the valley was named that because of the land speculators that were selling land, um, I guess around the turn of the century, 18 to 1900s.
Uh-huh.
That's how they were selling people on buying land down in the valley.
Really?
And yeah, so instead of saying that it was a delta, they said, oh, it's a valley. And so people think, oh, there's mountains, it's green, there's water. Yeah, well, you're on the northern edge of the Sonoran Desert, essentially. And it's green there just because of the you're close to the Gulf and also close to obviously the river.
Uh-huh.
So
Um,
it's false marketing.
yeah, it was marketing. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, I'm trying to think of something. Oh, and the valley was known for the citrus groves and all of the irrigation. Well, it turns out that was because a bunch of Japanese farmers had immigrated to the United States around the turn of the 1900s, and it was them who set up the irrigation system in the valley, and everybody else just copied it.
Wow.
For the
So
crop,
that's how, huh?
for the crops.
For the crops to grow onions, whatever vegetables, because basically in the valley you can grow 12 months out of the year.
Mhm.
It's like here in Laredo, you can grow anything 12 months out of the year,
Yeah.
and you just need to get water into your fields. And so the irrigation system, the farming really wasn't all that I wouldn't say popular, but it wasn't that widespread until you had these people coming in and starting, setting up their farms the way they're set up in Japan, and then just other people seeing how successful they were, copying it all up and down the river, probably all the way up.
I'm wondering if you know if because at the turn of the century, Laredo was also known for its onions, for its
Mhm.
orange groves. Would there have been influence from those that were in that area up here? I mean, obviously it ended up dying somewhat. We have very few actual
Yeah.
producing, but I wonder if there was some influence and
There, how much? There might have been, because up until they they put in Falcon and Amistad, they could send boats up as far as Rio Grande City,
Mhm.
because there are still remnants of the docks where you used to have steamboats crawling up and down the river, up as far as Rio Grande City.
Mhm.
that is so interesting.
Yeah.
Now, Wolverine, you grew up in McAllen, right?
Yes, I did. Uh-huh.
Uh, this whole McAllen Valley versus Laredo deal. How far do you think it goes? Because to me, I've read that like since Tatangelo was mayor in the 70s, early 80s,
Mm-hmm.
into the 90s, back then they would compare Laredo to what McAllen was doing. And
Well, I'll tell you, when I got here in 2000, Laredo reminded me of what McAllen was in the 80s.
so, huh?
And since that time, I guess it's because of NAFTA. Look, I mean, we've had that explosive growth on the north side and down towards the south as well. Um, it's grown a lot, and so I would say it's almost on par with McAllen, but it still doesn't feel like McAllen. One of my friends who does business in both Laredo and in McAllen says it's because Laredo is basically a Spanish colonial town. That's the way the grid. If you look downtown, our grid is basically, it's the same grid that you'll see in Mexico. It's the same grid you'll see in Spain and all across Europe, where you have, big public squares surrounded by buildings like houses or governmental institutions.
Yeah.
Whereas McAllen was basically developed, and most of the rest of the valley was basically developed by American businesmen.
Mhm.
So
I wonder if the comparison was always made with McAllen or with the Valley because we're all border communities. I mean, why wasn't it that we were comparing ourselves to Corpus Christi or San Antonio, or I mean, maybe because of the size as well?
I think it's the size, also the proximity to the border.
Mhm.
I know when I was growing up in McAllen, when we first got there, we got there about 68 or 69. McAllen only had a population of about 30,000.
Wow.
The valley was actually, and the population of the valley in general was quite small. McAllen wasn't seen as a major city. The television stations were in Harlingen and Weslaco. McAllen didn't even rate a bureau for either television station.
Yeah.
Probably not. It wasn't until after I graduated high school that they opened TV station bureaus in McAllen to cover news there and in Edinburgh, which is the county seat for Hidalgo. So like, there was an incident at my high school that the only reason they have camera footage for it is because the TV stations were covering a fire downtown and they just sent their units over. But if they hadn't been there already, they wouldn't have been sent.
Yeah.
I
And
wonder
uh-huh.
if
Go
that
ahead.
comparison then began not necessarily in the at the turn of the century, and then at some point it made that change when you lived there.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I don't have that same sense, and I'm a newcomer, obviously. Well, not that new because I've been here 20 years now, but
Yeah.
and I don't have that sense that those that are born and raised in Laredo have. And
It's
wondering, is that because it's a little bit more towards the history part of it and not so much recent? Because I get from Key Rose, I also get that sense that, okay, well, maybe, what's up with this rivalry, because he doesn't sense it either. Because
yeah.
McAllen has something big. I'm from the Chicago area. So my exposure to the Valley was actually Weslaco, Harlingen, because of the migrant farm worker streams. And so I work within activist organizations for migrant farm workers. So I didn't hear McAllen. I heard Edinburgh. I heard Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
I never really heard McAllen. So I've always thought of it as just a small town.
McAllen didn't start growing until about the time Othel Brand became mayor. And of course, that's a whole other story because, he did a lot of good things for the city, but he was also not so good for the city as well. But most of, like, when your migrant farm workers were saying that they were going to Harlingen or Edinburgh or even Mission, La Jolla, that's where most of the open space is in the valley, and that's where the farms would be. So they would go up north to work up there, then they would come back down to the valley and work the farms down here went during harvest season.
Yeah, which I think is fascinating because obviously the Chicago area was one of the migrant streams, right? So there were Minnesota, Ohio, and Illinois, but actually I have a long time friend who lives in Mercedes, and it's several generations. So my mother was also a migrant farm worker activist. So her grandparents were my mother's friends. She and I were friends. And then I saw her daughter was born and raised, going back and forth between Mercedes and the Beecher area, just south of Chicago. And it's just fascinating to me that there are multiple families that it's multi-generations, but you remain friends in this stream across multiple states. And in my case, it was obviously the Chicago area in Illinois and South Texas. To me, that's always been fascinating. That I still have a friend that, you know, back and forth from multiple generations. But again, it goes. It speaks to the farm working ethics and community that the Valley has, that maybe Laredo does not have similar, like it doesn't have those similar roots and traditions. So I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think, well, I haven't taught school here, so I don't know if we have that large of a migrant farm worker population in Laredo. And that's probably because, like you pointed out earlier, we don't have that many farms or any at all that I'm aware of. We have more ranches than we do have farms, but
onion farming was huge here.
Yeah. My mom actually used to work for Hardwick during onion season. And when they had basically the sheds were working 24 hours, the onions were coming in and they were being processed and being shipped out to, you know, all over the US. So it was I don't know. When I was growing up in McAllen, I was always aware that there was a difference between the Valley and Laredo, and it was kind of irritating to hear someone who wasn't from the area basically say, you know, they're the same place. Like, and when I was telling people in Corpus I was moving to Laredo, they were like, "Oh, so you're going home?" You know, and I'm like, "No, I'm going to Laredo. But you're from the Valley." And I'm like, "Yes, but Laredo is not the Valley, and the Valley's not Laredo." And I think it kind of stems from people just assuming the areas are the same and that they have the same issues. And a lot of ways we do, because we're border communities. Our economy here is dependent on what the economy in Mexico is. We have a lot of issues because of immigration, border crossings, but the areas are just different.
But
they're not the same.
We don't have football players who tackle referee.
Oh, well,
that's Edinburgh.
No.
I want to point out that's Edinburgh. He's from Edinburgh, not from McAllen.
Yeah, we're not gonna besmirch
the
name of McAllen here. No, but I was gonna say that like I have in-laws in Brownsville, and the only reason that I've visited Brownsville in the last 20 years is because of them. Otherwise, like growing up here in 70s, 80s, you know, Zapata was the farthest that maybe we knew of. And so, you know, past that, like you have to go kind of, what's next? Like Rio Grande City after Zapata?
Oh, Roma, and then Rio Grande City. Yeah.
So would Roma be the start of the Valley, or?
I always remember the maps on the when they were doing the weather for the Valley. It was Starr, Hidalgo, Cameron, and Willacy. Those were the Valley counties.
Okay. And
so Starr County is Rio Grande City.
Rio Grande City. And yeah, so like when we would travel, my mom would take us places. It would either be to the beach in Corpus, or we would go to San Antonio or Galveston. Houston, we never went to the valley. And so like
Yeah.
we never, I mean, as far as me, like maybe I'm not the best person to ask, but like if you mention the valley, like we never considered ourselves part of that. And maybe
Yeah.
people don't have a sense of the geography, how far it is from Brownsville to here, uh, which is like 215 miles, give or take.
Yeah. And the time depends on, if you go down 83,
Hmm.
or if you take the back road through Hebronville to Falfurrias and down 281,
Yeah,
or continue on further from Falfurrias to hit 77
yeah.
and take 77 down. You know, when I first started my job with the state agency, they were like, I started, and then 2 weeks later, they're like, oh, we need to send you to FAR for training. And I was like, well, okay, I can take the back way and whatever. And they're like, no, you have to go down 83. And I'm like, oh, kill me now, because the traffic is just so slow. But apparently, because too many people have had car trouble in the agency vehicle going the back roads, and OnStar doesn't really catch it.
Oh,
You can't track it. We have to go down 83 because that is, it's more heavily traveled, so OnStar will follow you all the way down.
right.
Not to be a downer, but
Yeah.
both of you know that I was in a very severe accident with
Yeah.
someone who passed away, but it was in the back roads. And I was ejected from the car, and then the car rolled on top.
Oh no.
There was no phone signal.
Yeah.
I don't know where we were, but my partner at that time knew to flag down a truck driver because they've got the CBs, but it's because of that terrain, and it is, I mean, it's a big divide. There isn't anything in between, but it is it's also something that separates us, I think. It's also something that separates us quite a bit. So when I think of McAllen, I think it's an area to go visit for a conference, I don't think of it as a rivalry. I think of stuff is happening over there. We were on our way to a Rotary conference. It was the South Texas Rotary Conference. It was going to be held in McAllen. So that's where we go for that conference and other conferences, or even when, my old partner used to go wrestling, they would go wrestle in the valley. Again, it was a place to go visit, not someone to compete against. But again, my perspective is maybe because I'm newer to this area and didn't grow up with that same. I just don't see why there is a rivalry, because both have unique features, both have unique populations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, our size is huge compared to McAllen, if you're just looking at the city of McAllen. So I don't get it.
But well, one thing is that like my brother-in-law from Brownsville, that they also do the same thing. They compare themselves against McAllen, right? And that McAllen and Laredo is not run as well. Brownsville and Laredo are not run as well by its city leaders the way that McAllen is. That they are so much more like forward looking. They're just know how to spend their money and run a tight ship. And so and I think that's one of the things that Aldo DeTangelo did one time, was that why aren't we doing business the way that McAllen is doing to grow and to invest in the community.
Yeah, because and they're not, they aren't right on the river either. We are. McAllen is about 10 miles in. So, but one of the things that's long pissed me off about Laredo is, yes, we have a lot of trade coming in, but all that money is going north on 35. There's very little of it actually being spent here in Laredo. It's all going north. And whereas McAllen is able, I don't know, I guess somebody would need to study how they're capturing a lot of that trade money and then using that to reinvest into the community, because their economy down there is really diverse. It's trade, tourism, there's some manufacturing going on, a lot of retail, uh, and what's left of all the farming, the sheds and things like that.
But I mean, here in Laredo, I mean, I think you do see some of the effects of tourism because I mean, I think that like a lot of our big box stores, restaurants, I think they do better than they do nationally.
Oh yeah, that's something that all the stores of every like Sears or Kmart, Anthony's, when Anthony's was still in existence, all of their number one stores are either in the valley, or they're in Laredo, or they might even be in El Paso.
Mhm.
But when I talk about tourism, the valley doesn't get just tourists from Mexico. They get tourists from the Midwest who come and stay there for 6 months.
Yeah.
The winter Texans that,
Right.
when I was growing up there, they were the bane of our existence, but they brought a lot of money.
Right.
I mean, yeah, they drive 20 miles an hour and stop in the middle of the street because, oh my God, there's a palm tree. Like, they've never seen palm trees before or something. But, we don't get that tourism.
Right. Well,
And the valley does.
we used to get it because of Noel Laredo, but not anymore.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true.
See, our tourism is one way coming from Mexico,
Mhm.
whereas in the valley, you get people from Monterey shopping in McAllen. But we also have, or the valley also has, the winter Texans coming down and living in trailer parks and staying for 6 months before they go home. They
Well,
dump a lot of, and they spend a lot of money.
right. And South Padre Island is close
Yeah,
by.
and yeah. Well,
So,
but when I was growing up, South Padre Island, I mean, there was nothing out there. There was one grocery store and 2 restaurants and a couple of little hotels that, had kitchenettes because you had to bring in your own food. And now to me, it reminds me of Miami,
mhm.
and not in a good way.
Oh,
There literally was nothing out there when I was growing up. And if you want to get a sense of what South Padre Island was like before they had that boom on the south end of the island, go north towards Andy Bowie Park. That's pretty much what it looked like when I was growing up.
hmm. Wow.
Nothing out there but sand dunes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So, I mean, I mean, Laredo, it's its own little secluded,
Mm-hmm.
part over here, and we're miles away from anything, and so, yeah, I just think that we're the gateway to the valley, not so much. We're not part of the valley.
No.
But here's my question to you, because you all have mentioned like the winter Texans are, I can imagine how they would be a huge boon to any economy, but consider why not consider the truck traffic that comes through here, that stays here in the hotels? Why do we not cater to that kind of tourism? Because it's not straight out tourism as in they're here for vacation, but they are here.
And yeah, I mean, they need food.
They need food, they need shelter, they go shopping here. Why do we kind of ignore that? Is it a class issue because we want people to shop in these big stores, or what do you think it is that has us ignoring that population? Because it's a huge population that comes through that comes through here.
Yeah, I don't know. We would have to ask somebody in the trucking industry because I mean, where did I mean, like this Gateway Hotel on San Bernardo? Like, I don't know if it's gonna close down. Like, I think a lot of truckers would stay there, but like, do they have the money to spend on hotels and stuff?
Yeah, well, actually,
Yeah.
they have arrangements with some hotels. Like when I had a friend who was a manager at one of the local on San Bernardo, and almost 100% of the clientele were trucking because they don't pay out of their pocket. It's if they work for a particular company, the company has a contract with that hotel, and they already know that's where they go. They don't have to pay out of pocket. Yep, it's just done. So, and I'm only, making assumptions based on that experience. For all I know, maybe I could be completely wrong, and they do pay out of their own pocket. Uh, but I can see how a larger trucking company is going to say, okay, we're going to need X rooms for X amount of time, and have them just on reserve for their employees.
Mhm.
I mean, what would truckers like to do if they had like a 24 hours here in Laredo?
I remember I ended up and it was through Twitter. Uh, Someone needed to know where the closest dog park was to San Bernardo, because they travel with their pets, and they're like, we don't know,
Mhm.
because we want to, have our dog play. And I asked the city, and they gave me a dog map. There are two dog parks, and that trucker actually ended up going to, I think, Independence Hills
Mhm.
with their dog. But why do we not have like maps already ready for things like that? That it's going to take them into a different part of Laredo, so that they are also exploring, and they're also looking
Mhm.
at other ways of spending money in this community.
And yeah, like I mean, the way that Laredo has been kind of mapped out, with you have the Santa Maria area with all the warehouses and like all these truckers kind of like maybe gravitating around the mall, the Norte area, but
Mhm.
like really there's no place for them to actually like stretch out. Uh,
Mhm.
to have like a public square, like Vicky with you were saying earlier about the way that the buildings are around these plazas and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when I was working out at Alamo Draft House, we would have a lot of truckers coming in because they would drive their loads in, and it would be hours before their truck got unloaded and then reloaded with whatever they were taking back to wherever they came from. And so they a lot of them would come into the draft house because they could get something to eat, they could watch a movie, and if their truck still wasn't loaded, they could buy another ticket and see another movie. But the warehouses being so far out, that's one of the reasons that they started the food truck ordinance,
Mhm.
was because of these truckers being stuck out at these warehouses, and they didn't have anything to eat. There was nowhere to go to get anything to eat. So that's one of the reasons they came up with the food trucks.
Yeah.
But actually, before the food truck ordinance, there were
Yeah.
trucks up and down in the Mines Road area.
Yeah.
They were on the street, and they would sell, and they did really, really well because of all the truckers that were there.
Yeah.
Truck park concept came afterwards, because now with that, if you're a food truck, you're not allowed to be on the street anymore. Now you have to be on private property. So now we've made it worse, I think, for
Mhm.
anyone to do business with the truckers, because they can no longer be in the street. They have to be on private property. I haven't gone out to see how that's worked recently, but I would think that it's now more difficult, because now you have to have a restroom nearby. You have to have all these other things that are going on with your food truck, whereas before there were no rules and regulations regarding it.
Yeah. Well, when I mean, they may have changed the ordinance since I worked at the city, but when they started, it was basically they needed to be off the street, because one of the problems was they were on the right of way and it was causing traffic hazard.
See
So
that?
they were like, okay, they can be on someone's property. They just have to have an agreement that they can be there. And then the trucks themselves had to have certain things like employees to be able to wash their hands and keep things clean and so forth. But I don't recall anything about requiring restrooms.
Uh,
So,
well, but one of the things that like right now with the paisanos, when
yeah,
they started to come in like around Thanksgiving week or whatever, that like they always set up this tent like
yeah,
miles away on I-35. And then at like several years ago, when they were coming back into the US, there was something that was set up near Bridge 2. And I'm like, why isn't there anything permanent to where people that are coming from the Midwest, to cross into Mexico, why isn't there a facility or a public space where, if they want to take a shower, if they want to go use a bathroom, if they want to get first aid or something, or car assistance for their cars,
Yeah.
why isn't there something along Santa Maria or along San Dario near Bridge 2 something?
That would
Well,
be
I
a great idea. I don't know if we want to make sure that we introduced Ari. She just joined us.
Okay. Hello?
Hi, Ari. But I was going to say, as a former paisana, we would travel from Chicago. I hated going through Laredo to Durango, Mexico. But the thing is that Laredo never had access to much of anything. Like, it was just like a last stop to use the restroom before moving on.
Right.
But had there been things that like the amenities that you're talking about, a space that, hey, we knew if our car was not doing all that well, or we needed the last minute provisions or whatever, that it would be easy to access, because there was always such a huge line, because we would come during paisano season and it was just packed, that we would go to your local Walmart, that we would not try to make any stops. We would try to do everything that we could in Cotula or further up, because Laredo was not the place that we wanted to stop or get out of line, because it was just going to be so packed.
Right.
yeah.
I really wish that we would have something like that would be easier to do your documentos, to get a little break before the long drive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I can see Ari. Thanks for coming in.
You're welcome. I'm sorry I'm late. I can stay for a little while, but I wanted to jump in and say hello and see how y'all are doing. And thanks for this, Kuros. This is awesome.
Oh, okay. No, yeah, no, thank you. It's the least that I can do. But yeah, no, we were just talking about like tourism and the trucking industry and the paisanos, and how Laredo really doesn't capitalize on catering to these people that come through here.
Right. I agree with Que Fregados. I think that there's a lot of resources and so many ways to help the paisanos, and I agree. I don't think that we do capitalize, and you're right. I mean, we set up a tent on the outskirts, and I feel like it doesn't really work well for them. On the other hand, I can see the congestion in terms of the traffic right in the downtown area, but I do think that there's a way to maybe deal with that, and it doesn't have to be right at the entrance of Mexico. But I do feel that they haven't really studied that, or if they have, they really don't know what to do with that. But I feel like, again, it's one of those things that we really haven't capitalized on. And I think that you're right, people, as you, Que Fregados, right, that you already knew. And so this is something that year after year, people already know, oh, in Laredo, this is what it's for. Our last pit stop to the restroom, and then let's go, rather than something that will actually be conducive to their journey that they still have ahead.
I'm actually very grateful to see that in these last, maybe 3 years or so, that they set up porta potties. I hate porta potties, but at least there are porta potties along Santa Maria, along San Bernardo, in areas where you're stuck waiting for hours to cross. That is so needed. And now you're starting to see, whether with permit or with permit, starting to see a few vendors that can actually sell to people as they are waiting.
And like I didn't really take notice this time around if the way that they have lined up on Santa Maria heading south, right? And one thing that like I think about is the holding community center on Santa Maria and Washington, that place would be perfect for people to make a pit stop as they're waiting in line. But then having something further up north, closer to the warehouses, because if the line does form, you can stop for, recharging your phone, for making a pit stop to the bathroom or something, or getting ice, whatever it is, changing your clothes. But I didn't notice it this year. Was it backed up on Santa Maria a couple of weeks ago? Anyone?
I didn't see, most years I
I don't
usually
think they've,
walked in and not,
have they started coming yet though?
I think, well,
they've
I mean,
started
I don't
coming in, but it hasn't been like the day where school is out and you're not the big long day. But this year I haven't seen the amount of traffic that we have in the past, and that I'm sure it's related to COVID.
right.
Yeah.
You did mention the holding, and one of the things not related to Paisano traffic, but that now they have a small sink outside for the homeless populations. It's there, and I believe Frontera Beer Garden that have these stations set up where anyone who's just walking by can wash up. And I remember living in another place in the downtown area that had a spigot outside. You would have a lot of homeless, and not every homeless person is addicted to drugs and these things that we imagine. Is you had people who would be washing their shirt or whatever in to get outside of my home a few years back, in the same way that you see the same thing happening in some of the fountains that are downtown. So I'm actually very glad to see those partnerships that are setting up like wash spaces pretty much.
Right.
For
those that are unhoused.
Yeah. What I remember speaking with somebody, I don't know if it was with the city or where, but when I was walking the Camino in Spain, in Pamplona, in the old city, because some of those buildings are so old they can't be renovated to add like bathrooms or washing, places where you can put your washing machines. The city actually has public showers and public laundromats.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost very much. Like I think I basically handed them all of my stuff that in my backpack, and it only cost me, when I did the conversion, it maybe cost me like $3 for a wash and dry. And I think the showers were even were about the same, and the place was spotless. The people working there, the ladies were dressed up in what I would say like white nurses uniforms with the caps, but they weren't nurses.
Right.
But everything was super, super clean. The showers, the peregrinos who used the showers there said they were spotless. They had toilets. The toilets were free. They didn't charge for the toilets. And I'm like, why don't we have something like that downtown?
We
Right.
do. No.
But I mean, yeah, I don't count the fountain at Bruni Plaza as a public shower, okay? But no, come on, let's get dignified. I mean, why can't we have something like that?
Right.
Because and that was run by the city of Pamplona.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't the only one. There were several in this older part of town where it either was cost prohibitive to add all the plumbing to these old buildings, to where they, for showers and laundry facilities. So the city just came in and built these public spaces.
But I think that decisions are made while missing the dignity that people should have. And if you don't have a home, because we make assumptions about homelessness, and it isn't the people that you see on the street that are the larger number. We have so many families that live multiple families in one home, and that is considered homelessness too. We have so many people that are living in storage units in their in places that are not habitable, it's substandard housing, and we choose to continuously ignore solutions that are going to help with bringing people up and honoring who they are and their dignity. And I mean, just the fact that we had a moment when the city manager decided to toss out homeless people's property. That was like, that's such a slap to people. and or the closing of the bathrooms in the downtown area. still need to relieve themselves in one way or the other. It's just, I don't know if we're, as a community, we fail to see that people do, they're willing to work for a lot of things that they have and that they require dignity and respect. And I don't think that we often extend that to folks.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was going to post the other day, I don't know if it was Thursday or Friday, with my on this day in Laredo little useless trivia.
I love those.
That it was the anniversary of the San Agustin Plaza, when the city closed off all the parking. You couldn't park around the San Agustin Plaza. I don't know why it was that they didn't want people.
It was a
parking.
La Posada decision.
It was, well, yeah, yeah. So I remember that. So that was like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. But I didn't post it because I was like, who is gonna like this is forget it anyway. So, but like on Santa Maria, you also have the Southwest Boys Club that's closer over there at the beginning where all the warehouses are. And so why can't you use the Boys Club to provide, washing facilities for the truckers, for paisanos, showers, and all these things? I mean, I think the facilities are already there. Maybe you can just expand on them. Anyone?
There are, I mean, several of your truck stops do have some washing facilities and some showers. They're just not as, you don't see them here in this area. They're more in your industrial areas, but I'm trying to think, and I don't think that we have as many as you would see on the road. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I go back, and I know I was teasing when I said Buc-ee's earlier, but they do have shower space, and they have washer dryer space, and they have other things for travelers and for truckers. But I mean, in past years when we've had emergencies, we've seen nonprofit organizations that are focused on disaster relief come in with a washer and dryer. It's mobile, and it's free. They'll provide you the soap and everything in those disaster areas, but then they go away. But that is actually something very simple that the city can provide, and it does support Bethany House, which is a nonprofit, of course. And you can wash and dry there too. You can shower, of course, there too. But it's so limited compared to the amount of people that we have that are in substandard housing or are homeless.
Right. Yep. So I think we're closing up on like an hour. I wanted to keep the podcasts kind of like short and sweet. And so any last remarks before I stop recording here, Wolverine?
No, just hope everybody's doing well. And if we don't have another podcast, I hope everybody has a good holiday season.
Thank you.
But I hope we do.
Yeah, well, I'll try to fix schedule something for next week.
Well, I mean, just toss out. I mean, maybe we could all take the load off of you, because it shouldn't be. I mean, yes, it's your show, and you make the decisions, but it shouldn't all be on you and us just showing up to talk. Right. Maybe we could throw out ideas, and
Sure.
You make a decision, or you call for a vote, or however you want to run it.
And just pick a time, so maybe we can have people plan ahead.
Yeah.
¿Qué fregados?
Thank you. See you all.
Stay warm.
Yes.
Is Ari still with us?
I am. Yeah. So, first of all, I'm sorry that I'm here late, but second, I think this is great. I think this will be a really neat platform to just get us talking more and throw out really good ideas that we have. But I agree with Wolverine. I think that if you want us to throw out ideas, if you want us to maybe coordinate times or whatever it is, you run the show, but it would be great if we could also help you. I know that there are a lot of people that have really great ideas and that really want some kind of platform to discuss. And I think that this would be a great platform. So first of all, thanks. And I do hope there's one next week, because I will definitely be on.
Oh, okay. Thank you so
So what
much.
I did have something to say. Today I participated in a conference. I'm always going to conferences, right? Because yes, somebody said I'm addicted to Zoom meetings, but I went to this. It's a cultural organizing for community change, and one of the things that was discussed was the having spaces where you can just sit back and think and analyze and take in and consider those that are around you, whether they are homeowners, whether they are residents, or whether they are unhoused. And I think it's important that not just this one, but maybe it'll trigger other folks to just sit and talk and think about what is around them and how they want to make their community better. Because I don't think that we do participate enough as residents of in the decision making, and we really should be more involved with the decisions that happen and the direction that the city goes into. And and it's okay to clash. That's fine to clash, but at least to have your voice be heard.
Sure.
And one of the things that I've noticed is that people actually do want to talk, right? They may not have that space that you talk about, or a platform, or maybe even feel comfortable that it's okay to express my opinion, my idea. I know in the classroom, a lot of students always say, I don't really have anything to say. But then when you pose an argument or some kind of position, or you show them something, then they can't stop. And that's really what you want. And it was always in them, right? It's just a way of getting that out of them. And so if this or another way of doing that, I mean, I think that would be great.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to end it here. And thank you so much for having such well-educated guests and everything. I'm humbled, but yeah, we'll see if we can do something else, another podcast next week on Saturday. And
Cool.
For this episode number 2 of Tweets of Laredo, I am Kiros, and we are signing out. Thank you so much.